So I'm just going to take this time to mess around with the first part where we're decoding the poem to find out where it is that we're supposed to start. And I'm kind of just going to do this on the fly and wing it. I'm not going to get into the grammar. If you want to see that analysis, you can go ahead and watch the playlist. I just wanted to try to go over this again briefly. And I'm not saying that this is going to be a posted version of this, but I just want to cover it again to make sure that you understand that everything that I'm doing here is in the poem. And I'm using one of the screenshots that I used from the analysis. And I also used it in the solution. So I'm just going to go over it again now. And I'm assuming at this point, like I said, that you understand what a phrase is, what a clause is, and how everything is working together. So let's just go on now. We're going to read the poem. And like I said, right here, Forrest Fenn is describing what he did, as I have gone alone in there with my treasures pulled. So that's how he's choosing to open his story. He's going to tell you what he was doing, and what he was doing here enabled him to keep his secret where? Where is the secret that he's keeping? These are both working like adjectives. It's my secret. And what is the secret? It's where. And I'm also going to hint that which is new and old. So these two lines up here enabled him to do this. That's why he's using the word can. He didn't say, I keep my secret where. He said, I can. In other words, the only way he can keep it there is the way the poem is now. If we do what he's doing here, if we follow in his footsteps, in other words, it is referring back to what he's doing here. And he's basically telling you to follow what he did when he says begin it. So it seems pretty straightforward. We get down here, and the first thing we see is begin it. Okay, we know what we're going to do. We're going to follow Forrest Fenn. But since we're only looking at the poem, we don't know where warm water, salt, and take it in the canyon down, not far, but too far to walk, is yet. So the only thing that we can assume at that point is that we're going to start where he's telling us to start in the poem itself. So the first time you're reading it, you're not going to understand everything that I have circled up here or put in a rectangles up here, and you're not going to understand it. So you're going to read the poem now. All you're doing is reading it. Okay, so we know what it is that we're to begin. He's telling us where warm water, salt, and take it in the canyon down, not far, but too far to walk. Put in below the home brown. We still really don't know what's going on, other than the fact that he's telling us to do two things here. He's telling us that we're going to need to begin it where warm water, salt, and take it in the canyon down, not far, but too far to walk. And then he's telling us that we're going to put in at some place that he's calling below the home brown. And then he's describing from that place that we put in, he's referring back to what we're going to be leaving from. We're coming from there. So he's saying from there, it is no place for the meek. The end is ever drawing nigh. So these two lines are describing where we came from. So essentially, that's defining this area that I have in brown. So we can assume now at this point that when he says put it below the home of brown, because remember, we're not going to a map, that the home of brown is everything above that line that's just put in. So anyway, now he's telling us where we're going to go. And we know that because he's telling us there will be. In other words, that's the way he wants you to go. So he's telling you, here's where you came from. Here's where you're going to be going to. There will be no paddle up your creek. So we know we're going to be going up a creek. So if there's not going to be a paddle, the only thing we're going to have is heavy loads and water high when we go in that direction. Seems pretty straightforward right now, right? But we still don't know what we're doing. So we continue reading the poem. It says, if you've been wise and found the blaze, look quickly down your quest to cease. Well, we don't know if we've been wise, and we don't know if we found the blaze yet. So we're going to continue reading the poem at this point, right? So he says, but tarry scant with marvel gaze. Now, just from understanding the English, one of these things that a tarry scant is a short stay, loitering, telling you that you're going to stay there for a short amount of time. And he says, with marvel gaze. So the first thing that brings into my imagination is that there's some historical thing, okay, a marvel. It's a noun, a marvel, that we're going to stop and spend a short amount of time gazing at that marvel. We don't know what that is yet. So he says, just take the chest and go in peace. Well, we don't have the chest, right? So if we're reading a poem and we're trying to find something, you could say that we came up cold. It's a cold case. We haven't found anything, right? Just keep that in mind. So then he says here, so why is it that I must go and leave my trove for all to seek? We know it's a rhetorical question that he's asking, because a rhetorical question is when somebody asks you a question and they already know what the answer is. They're doing that on purpose because they want to kind of open up a sentence and give themselves a chance to speak their point. So he's saying the answers I already know. I've done it tired and now I'm weak. Now, those are two separate answers. So one of them is hinting at one thing and the other one is hinting at something else. Notice that bold and old rhyme, obviously. Halt and walk also rhyme, and down and brown. Halt and walk is called a slant rhyme. And then, of course, meek and creek and nigh and high and blaze and gaze and cease and peace. So at this point, it appears that he's using an A-B pattern. He's saying, in other words, that's where you got there and where, that's A and B. The only time you add another letter is when you come across a word that's not already in the poem. So we jump back down here and he's saying he leaves his trove for all to seek. The answers I already know. So we know that he's using rhetoric to get a point across. That's all we know at this point. Now down here, he says, so hear me all. Now he's got the word there, all, and it's here too. So he's basically talking to those of us that are seeking. So he's saying, so hear me, and he's telling all. And listen good. Now, obviously, listen good. The difference between hearing and listening is here you can hear background music, but when you're listening to something, you're actually paying attention to it. That's the difference. Hear is just something's audible, and listening means that you're paying attention to it. You're trying to comprehend what it is that you're hearing. So he uses one of the rhyming words here, listen good. So he says your effort will be worth the cold. Well, we're cold right now because we don't have the chest. We didn't find anything. Now he's giving us another condition. He's saying if two conditions, that's important. You got to be both brave and in the wood. And if you are, he's going to give you title to the gold. So if we look at that last sentence there, all right, to me, what he's telling you to do is listen to the rhyme patterns. Now, if I step out here and you look at that A-B pattern, A-B, 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 bam, he breaks that pattern here and he rhymes with words that were in stanza 3. Interesting, right? So he's telling us to hear me all and listen good. Every place where he's discussing something like my secret where, my treasure's bold, okay? That's him. And then down here, he's describing things from his perspective. That's why he has me here. So and the same thing here, he's talking about why is it that I must go? He's got my trove. So my trove, he's leaving his trove for all to seek, and it is him that must go. So we're only really paying attention to the places where he's discussing something about himself. My trove. The answers I already know. So we're listening to that, and we're listening good. So he's hinting there at the fact that we should look at the rhyme scheme. When we get to your effort being worth the cold, cold is going all the way back up here, okay, to bold and old. And then he's talking about good and wood. And of course, those are rhyming. And what he's essentially telling us is that in the solution, the way that works is you're brave when you're in the area of the home of Brown, because that's where the Braves go. But you're taking the chest into the wood. He took the chest and he hid it in the wood. He didn't hide it up at the wheel. He hid it down in the wood. We're still not brave in the wood. But he's saying, I give you title to the gold. We came up cold. So he's giving us title to the gold. Now, like I said, cold and gold are going to take you back up to riches new and old. So, hint of riches new and old, he's basically telling you, he's referring back to treasures, which he has bold or emphasized. So, he's drawing you up to that location. So, basically, he's telling you that the title to the gold is treasures. He was with his treasures. That's a key thing he's telling you. So if we're going to follow in his footsteps, what we want to do is follow his footsteps, and we don't have a physical treasure chest. So we're going to take the title to the gold, which is the word treasures, and we're going to do something with it. What are we going to do with it? Well, we're going to put it where warm water's halt. We already have a T there. So he's already used the first letter. Now, and then he's telling you in the next line, take it in the canyon down this way, right? And he's telling you that I don't want you to go far. In other words, when we got to this line, we didn't go far enough. We're too near. We only went one step into the canyon. So he's saying, not far. No, not here, but too far to walk. So we take one more step and we're thinking to ourselves, is this where you want us to go? Well, he's telling you on that line to put in below the home of Brown. So he's telling us to put the word, what's left of it, in once we get below this line. So our goal at this time is to do exactly what he did and take his treasures in there. And the only other place, the first place that there is right here. So what we want to do is shift this line right so that the R in there is below the home of Brown, but not falling into the canyon yet. Use your imagination and pretend everything on this side is going down and it's a steep drop. Okay. So there's a cliff here, which comes into play later when you're trying to discover where warm water's halt. It's going to be near a cliff. Everything from this point is dropping down to a lower elevation. So all we're doing is sliding this line to the right until that R is right in this location. Then we can cross off the R. And then if we read this line so that we know what to do on the next line, he says from there, in other words, from where we are, it is no place for the meek. These are all adjectives. No place for the meek. The end is ever drawing nigh. It's a description. So no place for the meek is the end. So we're going to take the E in end and we're going to put that line over until that E gets in the canyon down over here. Now, if you notice where he said not far, but too far to walk, he's telling you to take the second choice. Whenever you're faced with a line that has the letter that you're looking for more than twice. So we've got an R here and an R here. Notice we took the second one. We've got an E here and the, but we took the second one and then those. So this wasn't a random choice. Also, the end, like I said, is no place for the meek. Now, this line, we have a T, we have the T, of course, here. We have the R that we slid in the spot. We have the E, that's finished. We have that into place now. Okay. So we need an A. However, this line, the only A in it is here. But he's telling us that there will be no paddle. There's no paddle. So if there isn't a paddle, the only thing that's left is heavy loads and water high, right? This is all that's left. That's what's going to be in the direction he wants us to go. We're going to be going up a creek in a direction towards heavy loads and water high. We're not going to paddle up the creek. We're not going to be in the creek yet at this point. Basically, what he's telling you, there's no paddling. So you can imagine we're going to drive or walk alongside of a creek headed upstream. We get to the next line again. So if there's no paddle up our creek and we were drawing nigh, he's telling you to take this line nigh so that in this column there are no letters. Because if you look right now, you can see we have the word creek here and it's interrupting the flow. So what we need to do is move it so that that is in the commas in that column, no letters. And then, of course, we get to the next line. There's no paddle up a creek. All we're going to have is heavy loads and water high, just heavy loads and water high. So we're going to take the second A, which is the A in loads, and we're going to shift this line to the right until that A is in this correct column. So now, we have all of these lines done. And the other thing, like I said before, this boxed in area above this line, he's referring to it as the Homer Brown. These two lines, since we put in below there, are referring back up. He's describing this Homer Brown, but this is telling you where you're going to go to. So this semicolon here is kind of like working like an intersection. Right here, we're going to have to make a choice. We're going to have to get off of there and head towards the location that he's specifying here. Now, as you've seen, and this is going to be hard to describe this part but when you read it, he's saying, if you've been wise and found the blaze. Well, we are wise because we picked up the wisdom that he had in these two in everything from here down, from but tarry scant all the way down, all of these hints. They gave us the knowledge. Remember I said know is a verb, right? Look up what know, how it's spelled as a noun. Well, the way you spell it is knowledge. So he gave us the answers, the knowledge. He enlightened us. He made us wise. And when you shift these lines, it's going to form a cross right here in this column. And when he says look quickly down, he's telling you to only read the words that are on the blaze. It makes sense, right? He doesn't want you to read the whole entire poem. He's telling you to read everything that overlaps that blaze that is not in the Homer Brown. So we're going to get the phrase, try the wheel. And he's telling us to read until we cease. When I shift it over, we're going to have the end. And the end is what you reach when you cease. And the same thing is that we're going to end up with the word end spells both horizontally and vertically. So when you're reading try the wheel on the first cross, you're not going to read anything else this way because you ceased. You ceased at the end, and you cease here at the end. So the message becomes try the wheel end. Now, when you're reading end, when you spell it vertically, you'll notice that he has an E and then a space and then a D. So you could read it as END. Okay, the END is ever drawing nigh. Think about like peanut butter and jelly. You know, he's saying the END are ever drawing nigh around the wheel. That's how the second part of the question is working. So all of the blazes around the wheel, A, B, C, D, we're only concerned with D is going to point to where warm water's halt, and E is going to point to the blaze, the sun, which is what we're putting our back to. And then we're looking down from the sun because that line goes straight into the canyon. And the first canyon that it hits is Five Springs Canyon. Just like line D is going to go down to where warm water's halts. And the first place it hits is Five Springs Basin, where Five Springs Creek forms. Five Springs Creek then becomes your creek. So when he's telling you to go down later on, when you're in the car, you're going to have to be in the car because it's too far to walk to. What he's telling you is don't walk from the wheel to the basin. I want you to walk down to where the sun is pointing, which is the intersection right here. And then there's going to be a sign here. This sign is talking about where you came from. In other words, if you don't exit and you drive up into the mountain, you're going to end up at the wheel. That's where the wheel is here. They call that medicine wheel passage. So, in other words, go this way to go to no place for the meek, and the end is ever drawing nigh. But I want you to make a left here. I want you to you came down from the wheel, right? In the poem. I want you to get off the road here and head towards heavy loads and water high, because you're now driving to the place where I want you to park, that you can then walk up the creek to the area where I want you to go. When you walk to that point, you're looking for a physical blaze. So I hope you're understanding it, but this is about as straightforward as I can make it. So when you're reading this now, this time, he's saying, look quickly, look quickly down your quest cease, as this time we did find a blaze in the poem, reread it. Now the hints come into play here again. He's saying, but tarry scant with marvel gaze, just take the chest and go in peace. Like I said, tarry scant is a short sojourn. And with marvel gaze, think about that. I want a hotel room with a view. I want a campsite with a view. I want to go visit some historical site, and I'm going to stay at a place nearest place to it. Okay, I don't want to stay far away from it, but I want to stay at a place where there's a view. So that's basically hinting again at Five Springs. It's the closest place that you could tarry scant at the Marvel Gaze, which is the falls. You understand what I mean? And it intersects the sun there. So at that point, we really don't need to read any more of this stuff down here, because this stuff down here was basically helping us determine the state that the wheel was in. And then he's providing the answers that you needed up here. So when we begin it, we're beginning it at the wheel, which is no place for the meek. But he wants us to go up the creek. But he's telling us up here that the location is too far to walk to. So hop in your car, drive down to the intersection, follow it to here, hop out of your car, hike along the trail, and this time you're going to find the physical blaze where the sun intersects the creek. At that point, when you find the physical blaze on the heavy loads, because he's telling us that we're not going to go up water high. There's no way you could go up a waterfall, right? That's the whole reason why he's taking us down to this intersection, because you can't walk there. You would fall off the cliff. So he's bringing you in from the bottom of the canyon, back upstream. This time, we're actually going to take the physical chest and leave. And that's the end of the poem. So the poem is very straightforward. You just got to do what he's doing here. And the only lines that you technically really need to shift are these four. And I want you to think about the reason why that would be. Remember that it's the warm waters that are taking the chest in the canyon down, not far too far to walk. So Forrest Fenn went in there, and use your imagination that he went to the basin where the warm water's halt. We know there's a piece of him in the chest. So he dropped a breadcrumb up there for us, and then he put the chest in the water, in your imagination. The current took the chest down and over the waterfall. When it hit the base of the waterfall, it went downstream a little bit more, but we're not going to be able to finish it because the rest of the treasure is there at that location. So I forgot here. We did do the day. And I wanted to point this out because, well, first of all, if you take a look, we started with the T in the right position. We have the S in the right position. So we don't need to shift the T in, and we don't need to worry about the S because they're already in place. They're already in that canyon. So the only word that we needed was REASURE. And if you listen to how that sounds, it sounds like you're sounding out the word and I want to put an S here because we're messing with sound. Sure. Reassure. The S is silent. Reassure. So He's basically giving us reassurance as we get into this part of the poem. He's giving us the confidence. Okay, he always said that the correct solver will go there in confidence and also bold. All of that stuff is somebody that's sure of themselves. They're sure of where they're going, so you're going bold and you're bringing the title to the goal because you don't have the gold yet. So if the S is already there, at this point, we only when we get down to here, the only letters that we have left are SURE. So we can, if we want, like I said, finish that using just the 9 clues, as I showed you in the solve. So we basically took the S in here because we've been wise and we found the blaze that time. Okay. And then he's saying, look quickly down your quest to cease. And it's ending with the E, which is interesting because that E, Karen, is the one that represents the sun. So basically, he made us sure of it with everything, like I said, from this point down. These are all hints. He said the clues are contiguous, and they are. We got 1 clue here, 2 clues here, 3 clues here, 4 clues here, 5 clues here, 6 clues here, 7 clues here, 8 clues here, and then this entire thing is the 9th clue. We know that because he said that we ceased here. We're done. And he's always kidding about that. He goes, once you get to the chest, you're just going to take it and get the heck out of there. So this is what makes me so confident in this solve. This is about as simplified as I can make this. If you don't understand what you're looking at here and you think this is too complicated, then you have no hope whatsoever in solving the poem. You can't get any more straightforward than this. And the trick that I used here to slide it is actually described in The Thrill of the Chase, if you want to get the hint. It's in the chapter called Jumpstarting the Learning Curve. Learning, knowledge. He's giving us knowledge. He's telling us about how he slid down to freedom and he got out to the place that he enjoyed. So we're basically sliding these lines, not randomly. We're sliding them based on what he told us to do here, and then we're sliding them based on the meaning of each of these lines. Nothing is random here. I'm not picking random letters. We always pick number 2, number 2, number 2. And we could stop here. But even if you continued, there's only one S here. So you'd have to pick the S and Y's. And then if you didn't want to do it the way I did it and have the U here, and you take the second U from quickly, and then you took the U from your, what you're going to end up in this column underneath wheel is WY, no matter how you do it. So why? Now think about that. You're jumping right down to here, and he's confirming it. So why is it? Boom. He's confirming the state. So try the wheel in Wyoming. and then end. Try the wheel, Wyoming, end. That's it. You could put the word treasures in there that you spelled out. Try the wheel, Wyoming. Treasures end. Okay. So try the wheel in Wyoming. The treasures at the end. It's right where you cease. So this is extremely straightforward. This has to be the solve. There can be no other. If you go to the wheel, you can find Porcupine Peak, you can find Bucking Mule Falls, Porcupine Falls, Clearwater Creek, and Elk Creek, I think it's called. There's a whole bunch of them. But how many of them are below the wheel and right off of the E cairn and the D cairn? Okay. And the other convenient thing is that everything is named after 5 springs. The word 5 is plural. So there's not one water, there's warm waters halting in the basin, which makes sense. It's a tub. They're not geysers, they're not boiling water. And also, you could replicate that. You remember how Forrest Fenn said that there are many places where warm waters halt, and most of them are north of Santa Fe? When he said that, that means there has to be one place that matches where warm waters halt in south of Santa Fe. And there's basins all over New Mexico that form headwaters of creeks. There's also warm springs down there that are formed, where warm waters halt. So that exists there. It exists in every state in the Rockies. Now, if you were looking at Yellowstone, geysers don't exist anywhere south of New Mexico. So that can't be where warm waters halt. And also, it doesn't make sense with the context of the poem. For those of you that are visual, again, there's a place called the Home of Brown. Doesn't matter what it is, just it's the Home of Brown, right? Somewhere in the Home of Brown, and in my sob, there's the wheel, right? So the wheel. So at first, the wheel is the imaginary place where warm waters halt. Okay. When you get to the wheel and when you get to the decarn, it's going to point from the center through the decarn, is going to point to the place where warm waters halt, which is Five Springs Basin in this case. And then, of course, the stream, it keeps going on. There's actually two reservoirs down here on Five Springs, but that's not important. Then it goes into the Bighorn River where it enters the Bighorn Canyon and so on. Then he's telling you that there's going to be a canyon here. And the water is going to enter the canyon at some point, okay? And then the canyon comes down, and here's the end of the canyon. So the water went into the canyon. Then we have the Ecairn. And from the Ecairn, the sunlight is going through here. It's intersecting the creek. And then, of course, it keeps going down. Now, in our case, it keeps going down, of course, forever because it's the sunlight. But in our case, it actually goes over a place called Rainbow Canyon. I remember Forrest said the end of his rainbow. What he's doing here is he's telling you that the place he wants you to go to, you can't walk to it from here. So we know there's a parking lot over here. So what he's telling you to do is go, and there's actually an intersection here, because this is actually a major road. Okay. And this road comes down, it goes all the way to level. So that's a major road. It's an obvious road. It's the only road that you're going to take that'll take you down the canyon. If you go this way, you're not going down the canyon, you're staying up in the mountains. So it's obvious that you have to take it, which in this case is alternate 14. Then, like I said, he's bringing you down to this intersection here. And if you read the signs here, one of them, and the way I drew this creek is wrong, but that don't matter. One of the things you could do is get off that road and go up to a campground and park here. This intersection down here is where this is. So he's describing where you came from. If you go that way, you go to the wheel, which is no place for the meek, the end is ever drawing nigh. But if you go this way, it's going to lead you to heavy loads and water high where you can tarry scamp. So we're going to follow that. And incidentally, this used to be 14A. This is the old 14A. This spot is described up at the wheel over here, and it's called the Crossroads of Culture. So it's a famous location. It's described up here. So basically, Forrest is telling you to come down here, drive up here, park. And then when you park there, all you're going to do is walk up to the point where this intersection occurs. You're going to ford the creek. And over here in the heavy loads is going to be a physical blaze and then a treasure chest. That's pretty much it. I mean, it doesn't really get any more straightforward than that. And you know how Forrest always said, me in the middle? Well, this is roughly in the middle, even if you measured this out. If you take a topographical map, which is what you should use, don't use Google, but you can take a topographical map, find the center of the wheel, cut through the ecarn, and you'll see that it goes directly over this point, and it cuts off. It goes directly over the stream. I didn't draw the creek accurately here, but you'll see what I mean. So that's about as simple as it gets. Go here, drive down the road, come up here, park, get out of your car, and go there. And the solve is over. Nothing here is biased. Okay. The information I got about the Cairns, A, B, C, D, E, is all public information at this historical site. And it's never going to go away. And it's the home of Brown because it's the spiritual origin of 81 Plains Indian tribes. They consider this area a place of peace. They will never fight there. So this is their spiritual home. That's pretty much it. So he hit it outside the border. Incidentally, in my solve, this whole area is public and it's BLM. The area within here is national forest. And you're right on the border of the two. When you get over here, you're close to the border. The waterfalls is roughly where the border is, where you flip in and out of the national forest. You could go here. He could have put the chest in here, but he probably didn't because this brown area is the area of protection. In 1989, the Indian tribes got together with the Wheel Coalition in Taos, New Mexico, with Francis Brown, Charles Brady, and Hammond Wise. And Forrest Fenn probably helped them raise funds through the people he knew to help them fight the lumberjacks that were trying to claim this area and cut down all the trees. And they preserved this. And they didn't finish doing that until like 2001 or two. And then everything went through. The lumberjacks can't go through, and they won. And then recently, I think 2009, they expanded the protected area because it used to only be like the wheel itself. Then they expanded it out to like here, and then they expanded it out to here. It's a lot of acres, and that acreage is the home of Brown, basically. And if you look at the mountain peak that's over here, Medicine Mountain, that's where the Indians think the gods live, under the ground there. And it's all interesting stuff, and you can learn about it all online. But that's it, guys. Oh, and one person asked me, well, how do you know that that's the place that Forrest Fenn wanted to go and die? Why was it special to him? Well, the answer to that can't be answered. It can't be answered. Forrest Fenn was asked that question once, and he said that initially he put that information in his autobiography. But he said that I took it out of my autobiography. So he never really told anybody why the place was special to him. And then he was also asked if the finder will recognize why that place is special to him. And he said, maybe they will, maybe they won't. So there's really no way to make that determination. Now, if you were to ask for my personal opinion, which is not fact, I would say that the time they were trying to protect this lines up perfectly with when Forrest had cancer. Now, Forrest Fenn spent his life collecting Indian items. Forrest Fenn knew a lot of Indians in Wyoming. You can see pictures of him with one of the Crow's Indians, Joe Crow. He was a medicine man, Joe Crow. He was the last living war chief of the Crow Indians. His uncle is the one who killed Custer, or was with them when he killed Custer. So Forrest Fenn knew that guy, and he also knew Francis Brown and all these other people. So when he had cancer, I would assume that he talked to them, and they basically told him, hey, Forrest, why don't you go on a vision quest? Do what the Indians would do, and go up there and spend a night at the wheel or something like that. Who knows? It can't hurt. So maybe Forrest did that. Okay. He went up there and he took a vision quest. He kind of describes that when he went with Donnie looking for Lewis and Clark because they fasted. They ran out of food. on the first day. Well, if you go on a vision quest, you eat a feast at the sweat lodge, and then you go up to the wheel and you spend 4 nights there with no food and water. That's what a vision quest is. And after you're done, you go and you see the medicine man, and he tells you the results of your vision quest. So there you go. I just wanted to explain it a little bit better, take a little bit more time so I don't feel rushed. And I wanted to make it visual for you guys. But there's really nothing more for me to say. And like I said, I'm open to comments. But if you're going to come out and tell me that you have a solve, I want you to explain it the same way I did. That's all I ask. Do what I did. Show me how the poem can get you there without using any external reference.